Hello, I'm GM Keegan, and today we're going to GM the internet. That means we're going to add corrections and challenges to the advice that we see on the internet. So let's dive in, see what we have in store.
There are 5 pieces of advice that I wish would have
Okay.
been told to me as a dungeon master a long time ago. And today I'm going to give you those pieces of advice, and a lot of people aren't going to like them. But at the same time, if you're a new dungeon master, if you're a veteran dungeon master, stay tuned and we'll run through them. So let's get right on into what it is that I wish I would have known in the beginning.
Fantastic intro. It's very solid.
The rule of 50 is the most important rule in Dungeons & Dragons. And what it states is this. The game is played with the D20, right? We all know this. You roll the D20, it tells you...
I've heard this before, and it's a very old school mentality which fits. I mean, the OSR Renaissance helps because of how much it's come back, but there's a very particular way of doing things. You'll see this on other channels, and it only works for very specific kinds of games. So I think I would take this particular idea. I know he's going to elaborate and give us some probably great examples, but I would take this with a grain of salt, because the one thing that we will always keep challenging on this channel is we have a myriad of tables. And sometimes people create universal ideas and pieces of advice that are very specific to only a narrow couple types of games. So we'll let him go through it, and we'll kind of like think about what is he saying and what kind of game is he actually trying to reinforce. And that's what's important. What is he trying to reinforce? It may not be your kind of game. If it is, it's great. If it's your kind of game, then this may work. But we got to remember, this is just a very select type of advice. So we have to like really start thinking and grow our mind.
Yes. An 11, a DC 11, is a 50% chance. If someone has an armor class of 11, you need to roll an 11 or higher, assuming you have no proficiency and no bonuses, right? You have nothing. It's just a raw die. What's on the die matters. Well, if it's a skill check, a DC 11 means an unskilled person with no bonuses has a 50-50 chance at rolling an 11 or higher. And why is it 11? Why is it not 10? 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 10 opportunities on a die, as 1 through 10 would be a failure. There is no 0 on a D20. So understanding that 50% rule as a dungeon master allows you to think on your feet. It doesn't matter so much when you're looking at things, but if you're going up and you're saying, hey, I've got a party and I'm trying to put a monster up against them, and they don't have really a real strong to hit. Yeah, they're early. They've got a +2 proficiency modifier. Their stats are fairly low, so they only got like a +4 to hit. Well, that means an AC 15, 4 plus 11 equals 15 would be their rule of 50. So if they attack that monster, they have a 50% chance to hit on a 15.
And I'm kind of curious why, like, I understand how you can do that on the fly quickly, but game design wise, that a lot of players may not realize this, that's a terrible feeling. 50-50 is a terrible feeling. Now, if you're going to a very realistic, granular system, like if you're going to GURPS or something like that, then the percentages matter. But for a game that's more enticing and leans towards the fun of a player, like D&D, and that sounds like what we're working here with, we're focusing on D&D today, then it's okay, but. So let's hear the rest of the explanation and push back a little bit on it, and we're going to reserve full-on critique until we're kind of done with what he's actually trying to say.
All of a sudden, if they have an AC of 20, that now becomes a 25% chance to hit. So the rule of 50 allows you a very quick chance to see where the players are going to have a 50-50 chance. So on the fly, if something's happening and you need to say, hey, let's go ahead and do this, and you need to come up with the DC of a skill check, and you want them to have a better than 50 chance. Your rogue has, he's got a +3 dex with a +2 proficiency bonuses, gives him a +5. Piece of cake. That means a DC 16 check would be a 50-50. Well, I want to make sure that he has a better chance. So that would be DC 11. And so that's one of those things where I always make sure to give my players the opportunity to hit or miss based upon what's happening. Now, a lot of people don't like this because, well, you are effectively deciding the DC based upon the likelihood of the party. You're right. When I'm improving, I'm not putting something there on the fly. I need to know, do I want the party to succeed or do I want them to fail?
Okay, I know he's going to go on with more, but I would say there you go. That's the crux of, is this your table? That what he said. Is this your table? You want to, on the fly, create the kind of gaming experience, a very curated moment to moment. I want to give this to my players. I want to increase their odds of succeeding or decrease the odds of succeeding. Moment to moment, you may feel that's great. That is not universal advice. That's why we have a big debate. It's been going on for, I don't know, 40 years of the rule of cool. I make judgments, and others like, no. I let the rules, the raw. So, right. So it's a huge thing. Is the GM making judgment calls, or is the rules guiding everything? So this is a very particular thing, and we can't say it's universal because it's one of the most contentious things on the internet of raw versus cool. And that's endless debate. You're going to have endless debate because we have thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So you can have hundreds of thousands of tables and ideas. And I think there's a little bit more wiggle room in that. It's not so black and white that the discussions kind of make it look like. But now we know. He is saying, if you're going to curate an experience for the players moment to moment, not just generally what's the difficulty of something, this is potentially a good piece of advice. And that not being said, I think, is a failing of that we need to work on as a community. To be very specific on this type of advice, not universal. No piece of advice is universal or general. So now let's continue on. He probably is going to give more examples of why he thinks this is a good idea.
Both are going to be a narrative success. I have that in my head, but I would like the players to make sure they have their agency about them. So I adjust that DC saying, hey, a DC 16 is a 50-50. Let's make it a DC 13. Give them a little bit better of a chance than 50-50. It allows you as the Dungeon Master to quickly make up DC and save throws that you may need to have the players make, but you want to make them not easy, not hard, but balanced for the party, because you still want there to be some tension on the table.
Oh man, this is such a debatable moment because he just said, I want them to succeed. I just want them to feel like they earned it themselves, that they have the agency, like they did this on their own. And it's like, that's a tough one. Because perhaps this is a moment that it should. And I think this is a very tough one. Because sometimes people are like, this like spills over into other things, like the health pool of a character, of a creature. Changing it behind the screen, adding an extra 0 when they do stuff because you're like, that was too quickly, or this is dragging on, I'm going to make the next hit win. People have done this. It's fudging dice behind the screen type of thing. I can understand his intent behind that. It even maybe sounds noble, or him making the game more fun for the players. The only thing is, you have to know, I don't know if he is, but these statements are kind of lying to yourself by saying the player has agency when you take away their agency by changing the difficulty, or changing the difficulty based on that character, because the rogue does this and then the wizard has no chance, and then you're like, oh, I didn't realize that was going to happen. Now I have to change the difficulty again for the wizard. Hopefully there's more reason behind it. He says there's narrative reasons, but this almost sounds like illusory. I'm not saying that's bad, because I am definitely a proponent of the Quantum Ogre, but I think that's a very niche thing to do. So I think balancing an encounter and realizing your math is off during your prep and then play, and you're like, oh, I didn't realize that's what was happening. That's, to me, that's like a QA adjustment in the moment. But knowing that this is advice, that a technique that you do because you're like, yeah, I'm always just going to keep adjusting to the players or whatever. Oh, what are all of their skills? Well, I have to look at it. Oh, they have a +6. Okay, I know what I'm going to do now. Instead of, I put this as a 12. Oh, that was a mistake. It should have been a 14 all along. That's a in the moment QA correction, right? You're testing your balance in the moment, and you realize, oh, I kind of screwed up. That to me feels like, okay, I'm making a correction. So I do kind of challenge the intent of this a little bit. Of, is this a beneficial thing? And is it well, as long as the players don't know, it's okay. What they don't know won't hurt them. Let's see.
It's a great rule that took me a long time to learn. So just remember, an 11 with no modifiers is a 50% chance. All you have to do is take the player's modifiers, add it to the 11, and that gives you your rule of 50. Anything lower than that, it's easier than a 50-50 chance. Keep that in mind the next time you're winging your skill checks. Everything in Dungeons & Dragons is decided by the Dungeon Master.
I think he should have started with that part when he said the winging your skill checks. I think that would help you kind of understand where to put the difficulty, but not base it on on the players. I think that's a better way of doing it, because you're trying to think of something on the fly, and it's very D&D specific. Of like, okay, so this is how to get it your percentage quickly. Cool. I also wouldn't start with 50%. I think that's actually really low. Except I guess that's where your baseline, and you go up or down from there. But I think that's the important thing. That's a good technique to do it on the fly. But all the reasonings were to manipulate a situation for the players, while it doesn't look like I'm taking away their agency. So, okay, let's move on.
This may not sound like a tip or trick, but it is. As the Dungeon Master, you have the final say. Your creativity on the table and the information that you give the players is all they have to go on. When you learn that, you'll learn that your players are reacting to you. If you don't give the players anything to react to, they'll stumble around. But they will react to everything you give to them. Meaning, if you describe the desk in the corner with exquisite detail and nothing else, where are your players going to go? The desk. Now, there's always the exception to this rule. There's always the player that's out there that doesn't want anything to do with the information you're giving them, but that's not how it normally works. What you describe to your players is what they react to. So if you don't describe something to your players and your players don't find something that you needed them to find in order to move the story forward, or that way, well, that's on you as the Dungeon Master. And that's okay. Understand what I'm saying. Be the DM that gives your players the right things to interact with when it's related to a story. Now, the magical item that's hidden in a room that the players choose not to investigate, they will never find that magical item. They will never know that it's there, because you will never tell them that it's there. Because that is part of dungeon mastering. That's part of being in the game. You put the item there, they didn't investigate, they'll never know. Now later on, maybe they meet a mage that talks about the magical item that they decided to put in that drawer of that place that they went. Maybe the players choose to revisit and run into a thief that's in the process of stealing that item. Remember, just because you put something there now doesn't mean you can't tell the players later on if you want them to go back. And remember, the players are reacting to what you give them. You can always give them a rumor about a place they've already been if you need them to go back. Then it's up to the players to react to that. Food for thought. There is no such thing as over prep.
Okay, but he's moving on to another one. So, like, he first was talking about that players only react to what you tell them, and sometimes we've heard these crazy stories of that they focus on the one thing that you tell them, or the opposite. You could talk about this like amazing desk, and they're like, "Yeah, but I want to know, is there a light in this? Oh, there's a ordinary torch on the wall. That's the most important thing." Like, okay, we've heard that. But I think it needs to go further because this goes off in so many directions. It's scene setup. What are players going to react to? What you give them? Yes, for a very story-driven game, like plot-driven game, typically an adventure style D&D game, you commonly are going to set up like the next thing. So sure, whatever they react to is important. So I think it would have been a better example of if you want them to find the magic item, which it sounds like that's what if you have hidden information that you want to reveal, then you have to be a little bit more forthright in how to reveal that information. That's what it appears he's trying to say, which is fine. But it's kind of like glossed over so much that we didn't get a good example. So we're just going to kind of like leave it and move on to the next one, because scene prep is such an important part of GMing. It's a skill that just takes a long time for us to really grasp and to get proficient at it. Because like anything else, this is a skill, and you can have natural talents on parts of it. One of them, scene setting, is a particular skill within GMing. Not a lot of examples other than if you have hidden information you want the players to get, then you kind of have to direct it a little more, but that's like the art of storytelling. So I'm not sure which direction he was going to go in. So let's just move on to the next step.
There is no such thing as under prep. There's the amount of prepping that you need when it comes to any TTRPG. If anyone tells you never over prep, there is no such thing as over prep. There's no such thing as under prep. They're all wrong, because you can over prepare depending on what you're trying to accomplish. Me as a dungeon master, when I originally started, I prepared a lot. I needed a lot of preparation. I needed to have stat blocks. I needed to have monsters. And when you're prepared and your party goes over here, well, that change is what I learned to become less prepared, but more prepared in the bigger things. So what does all that mean? How do you prepare? Well, what are you good at? Lean into your strengths as a dungeon master. Me, I prepare the world. I prepare the big things, the things that are happening around the players, so that way I can always inform them of what's going on. You know, the king has moved in. There's guards all across the street. The guards now respond. I've set the thing up. There's a religion that's in town, right? That's now pushing their religious devices of purity and trying to get people to not sin and going through purity.
Okay, so he's going on a personal example, which is fine. Is that so now what we're into, which is so important that we really zone in on, and it's going to be like one of the number one things we do in this channel in the community, is we really push that to know thyself. That's so huge. What do you need? Okay, well, you have to be very personal, and in this regard, prep, very personal. He said, what are you good at? That is a moment where you have to think, what am I good at? Where in the cracks can I fill in on the fly during the game? And other ones, where do I need help to just a one-word reminder, a sentence reminder, or do I need a picture, which I think is very underutilized, that people do not put enough pictures for themselves, whether it's online or offline, which these are two different things that we don't talk about enough. Is what do you do to set yourself up the right way? And everybody organizes themselves differently because we all have different minds. Like the suggestion of using a picture for yourself or online, and maybe you need that. You could put it, a lot of them have like GM layers and you want that. Or you have a Google Doc, or I know there's a couple internet programs that you can subscribe to or pick up that you can put in information, whatever it is. If it's bullet points, sentences, pictures, whatever it is, you need to know what you need. And now he is kind of describing what he needs for himself. So he's building the world out. So we're kind of learning about his example, but you really need to know what do I need to function, and not stare at my notes the whole time with a lot of I have no idea type of moment. So this is what he needs, and we're going to continue the rest of his example and see if he kind of like gives more detail of why, because the why is important.
And purity filters, and they're being super aggressive about it, but the guards don't care because they're just there to collect taxes. Okay, I've said that. Now the players, depending on what they do and what they react, I'll throw hooks at them, right? Depends on why they're there. The thing is I prepare the big pictures because I can come up with monsters on the top of my head. I've built enough now to where I don't even need stat blocks. My monsters, I can come up with something completely random, a skeleton that basically has ironclad arms and ironclad things with shields and spikes, and all of a sudden it's this skeletal zombie or a skeleton golem made out of iron. And it doesn't matter what the stats are because I'll write them down as we go. I know what needs to be a plus to hit because I've played long enough, so I don't have to prepare that anymore. A new dungeon master may need stat blocks, and they need balanced encounters. They don't kill their party out, doing research on how would I do damage this party without killing them. That's what you need to do. Preparation is about you. What I can tell you is this. I encourage people to get to a point in their dungeon mastering where they can prepare with bullets, big ideas, and have stat blocks that they can reskin quickly. Those are the fastest ways to do things, where I'll have a stat block geared towards the party. Now, that stat block is going to be bandits, but they decide to go to a crypt. Well, that stat block and that encounter are now skeletons. Same exact encounter. I just said they're skeletons instead of bandits. That's all. I said they're going to go and fight a basilisk in the forest. They go to the ocean. That basilisk just became a rock shark. Same stat block, but now it swims. That's a reskin. I rename it, I reflavor it, I put it in front of the players.
Reskinning happens all the time. We do this all the time as GMs. But one little addition to what he's saying is that's easy because of his experience. Because when he said a rock shark, I was like, a rock shark? What is that? I guess that's a D&D thing. While I've played a lot of it, this person is way more experienced in D&D than me. His system mastery is greater than mine. I am not a newbie to D&D, but people have greater experience than me in D&D and can just recite the entire spell lists, remember every creature ever and they I remember alternate ones and different editions and unearthed arcanas, and I've seen this on Reddit, and they have a storehouse because they stick to this one game. I don't when I run games, so I don't have that kind of storehouse. He does. He's very fortunate to have this in his mind already. So don't know that's an experienced GM or DM thing that he just did, because he's like, rock shark, got it, I'm done, I know, rock shark. And I'm thinking, what? That's a thing? A basilisk? Unless he just came up with the idea because the idea of a basilisk in the water, he's like, I don't know, they have a stone turn people to petrification, it's in the water. How about a rock shark? I mean, that's stonefish could have been just as cool. But what? So maybe that's what it is. But if rock shark's an actual thing, that's such an experience thing. So don't freak out and beat yourself up over not having a bestiary as expansive as his or others. It's okay.
Just because that encounter was one that I balanced for those players. So keep that in mind. There is no such thing as over prep or under prep. There's the amount of prep that you need. Focus and prep what you're not good at coming up with on the fly. And if you're running a campaign, sometimes prep is great because your players are on board. They're on board with going in the direction you have planned. And there's nothing wrong with that either. If you give your players magic items, be ready for them to break the game. That's it. That's the only thing I wish people would have told me. Be ready for it and let it happen. Also, don't be afraid to give magic items limited use. Magic items do not have to be forever.
That is funny. I always, I'm on the give magic item side a lot more, to the point that things do spiral out of control, because I was like, I want to give more things to them. I think that's very fun and cool. And to break the game, yeah, that's because breaking the game is, that's a funny term, because you literally can do anything. You can do something insane where the old hag if this is your style of a fantasy world like D&D, that you're like, yeah, she just casts open plane rift, if that's a spell or not, and all she does is throw you through the multiple planes until you take 5,000 damage. Because like you could do insane stuff. You just kind of have to be prepared to jump on that roller coaster, right? Because it's going to be wild. What he's saying now, I think is a much better way to handle this, because you can give them more powerful things in very limited use. Give them whatever his examples are, but like I do a lot of 1 to 3 uses, because then they think, okay, I could do this really cool thing. Like it's a cheap example, and I've put it in so many of my games. A literal skeleton key, where it's a key with 3 skulls on it, right? It's a bony key, traditional, with like almost 2 teeth, has 3 little skeletons heads on it, and every time they put it in a lock, one of the skeleton heads disappear. It's a literal skeleton key that works on any lock in the game, magic or otherwise, and it bypasses traps and everything. It's a super powerful item. They can go up to anything and do that, right? Kind of funny cliche little thing, but it's, they could see the uses, so they don't have to be like, what is this meta game has usage? You can be like, give them an example and it changes color, something strips away from it, or it's a one-time use and after they use it, it's inert, or you just can do magic identification and kind of give them a little bit of information. But I think that is great, because you can do crazy powerful things and just be like, 1 use and then it's gone. That's cool, because when they use it, that's fine. It can end in like you had this amazing epic boss fight and you're like, boom, this happened. I forgot they had that. That's cool as hell, because that player feels awesome because they have an overpowered item. They use it at the right moment. So limited use, cannot recommend it enough.
They can have limited use. They cannot recharge all the time. Their recharges can happen slower. Do not be afraid to give the players magical items. Encourage them to use them, or encourage the magical items to fade away if they're not used. The thing is a lot of players hoard magic items because they don't come up very often in a game. They'll sit there with that potion of giant strength because they never know when the next one's going to come around. I give my players more magic items than they can physically carry on their body. I overwhelm them and then expect them to use, and then just ramp up the difficulty of the encounters. The thing is that magical items serve no purpose.
The thing that was a hard lesson is ramping it up could easily just mean if whatever the level that they're at, do twice that much in damage every time they get hit. That could sound crazy, but like if you're giving them an overwhelming amount of stuff and they're at level 4, then just add 8 damage to anything that happens, so that when they get hit, they might normally get hit with 8, but now they're getting hit with 16 at level 4. You're like, whoa, that one hurt, that stung. I want to use my giant strength now to like end this fight right now, because it's okay to do that. You can just let them play out and use what their abilities, what their magic items are, because you want them to be like, oh, this is scary, I need to use it. So you want to have that like visceral response. Just ramp it up at will. It's not a big deal. I mean, he already encouraged that earlier in the very beginning to kind of like manipulate behind the scenes.
And the players never have to use them. They always hold on to them, and then when they do need them, they fail to use them. Don't be afraid to give your player magical items. Don't be afraid to give them 1-use items, and lots of them. Encourage them to use them, letting them know that, hey, this world is filled with magic. You're always going to come up with magical items, and you'll always be able to replace most of them. And so then put them in situations where those magical items would benefit them. You'll be amazed at how quickly the players adapt and use those magical items if they know that's not just going to be out. Don't let your players exist in a vacuum is a tip that I wish would have been told to me, meaning this. As a dungeon master, if I gave them a tip a long time ago, a hint, when they went into a room and now they don't remember it, I don't necessarily make them rely on their notes. I tell them, remember in this room, you guys encountered this with the triangle. Oh, yeah, I remember that. There's nothing wrong with that. Your players are not going to dislike you for it. I've never been upset where Dungeon Master reminds me of something that we forgot about. If it was something that was very apparent that it was told, bring it back up to the players. You do not have to allow them to exist inside of a vacuum only on their own notes. Now, if you're playing a more adversarial...
I don't think I'm agree with this next part about the adversarial part, but you gotta remember that the characters live in that world. We don't. Whether you go to school, you have a life, stresses, work. Most people are playing once a week, 3 hours plus whatever you're playing that week is all that you're living in that world for just a small few hours compared to the rest of the week. But the characters, this is their existence. They may not forget. And in fact, you can play for months and realize in game it's been a week long. You're going to remember everything going on. If that character is going to remember every little thing because they're like, this happened 2 days ago. Of course I remember this. So it's okay that their notes aren't as extensive as yours, or they just forgot to write down certain things, because you don't want them to basically have a recorder to everything you say and then listen to it post game. Like, it's okay for general things that they would know about type of stuff. Now they can make decisions based on what they want to do. That's fine. But if it makes sense, they should know. Just remind them of a name or a place they've been to, or your character would know this person. They were in that castle or blah, blah, blah. It's okay. It's okay to remind the player what the character already knows.
Adversarial game where that's something that your players like to do, sure, absolutely. But remember, there is no right or wrong way to play Dungeons and Dragons. So I encourage you to help them. Help your players be successful. Help the players remember the puzzles. And if they're not getting progress and they start getting frustrated, give them a hint or tip. For some reason, dungeon masters think they can't help the party. They can only supply them or provide them with what's in front of them. And you don't have to. You can always help your party. You can always help them into a winning position. Suggest things that may help them win. If you had a certain way...
Oh. That's a hard disagree. Assisting a player because they forgot certain things. Oh, remember that when you went into that one chamber, there were 3 coins. And then if they kind of forget, like, oh yeah, there were 3 coins. 2 of them had heads and 1 was tails. And the tail was like a weird dragon's tail. And if they don't remember, you're like, and remember how some are facing one way and some are facing the other, so they can remember themselves. It always feels better when you can remember yourself. It's different than giving them a suggestion on how to win. Like, hey, maybe you should use this spell on that over there to help you. Or did you have rope? Because maybe you can swing across the cavern. I think that's... He was saying there's not a right and wrong way to play. I think that's an absolute wrong way to play. Because if you're the GM that sets this world up, and then you tell the players, or suggest, strongly or otherwise, how to interact with it, solve it, win it, the players are in the game for a reason. 1, what's their responsibility? And 2, it feels good on their side when they solve something or accomplish something or do something themselves. The better way is just make sure that if it's that big a deal, don't make it a pass-fail. They don't get this puzzle, they can't continue on with the adventure, so to speak. Then it's all about setup again. So I strong disagree. I think that's an absolute wrong way to do it. Players need to build skills too, because it just helps the table out. Everybody bringing their own skills together makes for a better campaign across the board. Your favorite Let's Plays or your favorite moments at your own table are when you, the player, do it. Not because it was handed to you or led by the nose by the DM is like, I'll tell you how to beat it. Here's my suggestion, aka this is how to beat it. Oof.
that you thought an encounter could go and it's going poorly, remind them there is that ledge above you at the staircase that would give you a height advantage, and then you also have the trenches beside you. So keep in mind everything that's going on. Oh, I forgot about that. Get the archer up there. Those small things make the world of difference, and they don't take away from gameplay. unless you have decided that it does ahead of time as a group. No wrong or right way. The players don't have to exist within a vacuum. Keep that. Never tell your players what they missed and never let them behind the screen. This is a rule that I wish somebody would have told me when I first started, because I used to be excited about sharing all the cool things that I had planned. But what happens is this. When your players miss something and you're like, oh, if you would have gone into this room, you guys would have found this magical item. All of a sudden, that will forever infect the players. They will now search every single room, top in and top out, because they missed that magical item. Don't ever tell them what they missed. Don't ever tell them the monster, how they could have beaten that monster. Don't let your players see the tricks you're using. They'll know them. They know they exist. But the moment you as a dungeon master share that they exist and how you use them, the magic is gone. And it will forever be gone for that campaign. Now, when you start a new campaign, there's something about it where you get to wash your hands of all of that dust. But don't share the magic item they missed. Don't tell them how you dropped the party's, the big boss's hit points because it was going to launch on them. Don't tell them you fudged a dice roll. Don't tell them that you upped a monster's hit points because they were doing too much damage. Do not tell them the things you do as a dungeon master to create the wonderful situations they experienced. Keep doing them all. Keep surprising your players. Keep doing amazing things as a dungeon master, but never let your players into your mind. Share those things with other dungeon masters that are not your players. Dungeon masters will revel in it with you, and your players never have to know. And all the players that watch my videos, I feel like I let them down, but don't ever do that. And guys, as always, thank you for joining us. Like, subscribe, comment below, and as always, we will see you next time.
Okay, that was kind of fantastic. Perfect music swell at the end. Go to this guy's channel. Check him out. We're going to put a link in the description. Thanks for watching GM the Internet. And remember, watch the original video and leave a positive comment. Then come back to the community Discord and leave your own challenges and corrections. See you next time, and have a good night.